If you're receiving the state pension or planning to retire soon, what I'm about to share could change everything you thought you knew about your retirement income. The triple lock guarantee that has protected pensioners for over a decade is facing its biggest shakeup ever, and the changes coming in 2026 could mean the difference between a comfortable retirement and struggling to make ends meet. We're talking about potentially thousands of pounds at stake here. The government has just revealed plans that will fundamentally alter how your pension increases each year, and most people have no idea this is coming. I've got all the details, the numbers, and exactly what you need to do right now to protect your financial future. This isn't clickbait, this is real, and it affects millions of people across the UK. So stick with me because by the end of this video, you'll have information that could literally save you a fortune. Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm absolutely delighted to have you joining us today because we're diving into one of the most critical topics affecting pensioners and soon-to-be retirees right now. This channel is all about cutting through the noise and giving you clear, actionable information about pensions, benefits, and financial planning for retirement. Today's topic is massive, and I mean absolutely massive. The triple lock pension system, which has been the cornerstone of retirement income security since 2010, is about to undergo transformational changes in 2026. These aren't minor adjustments or small policy tweaks that you can safely ignore. We're looking at fundamental reforms that will reshape the entire landscape of state pension provision in this country. I've spent countless hours researching government documents, speaking with pension analysts, crunching the numbers, and analyzing exactly what these changes mean in real terms for real people. What I'm going to share with you today is comprehensive, it's factual, and most importantly, it's going to help you understand exactly where you stand and what you can do about it. Whether you're already drawing your state pension, whether you're counting down the years until retirement, or whether retirement still seems like a distant dream, these changes will affect you. So make yourself comfortable. Maybe grab a notepad because you'll want to take some notes. And let's get straight into the details of what the triple lock changes really mean for your pension in 2026 and beyond. Now let me tell you why this has been such a game changer for pensioners over the past 14 years. When the triple lock was introduced, the full basic state pension was sitting at around £95 per week. Fast forward to today, and the full new state pension, which applies to people who reach state pension age after April 2016, is over £200 per week. That's more than double. This incredible growth has meant that pensioners have seen their income rise substantially, often outpacing general inflation and ensuring that the state pension maintains its purchasing power. For millions of people living on fixed incomes, this has been absolutely vital in maintaining their standard of living, especially during periods of high inflation like we've experienced recently. But here's where things get really interesting and where we need to pay very close attention. The government has been under mounting pressure for several years now to reform the triple lock system. Critics argue that it's becoming too expensive, that it's unsustainable in the long term, and that it's creating an unfair burden on working-age taxpayers who fund these increases through their national insurance contributions. The Treasury has been particularly concerned about years when unusual economic circumstances create what they call anomalous increases. We saw this dramatically during the pandemic recovery when average earnings growth spiked artificially, leading to a massive 10.1% pension increase in 2023. The government temporarily suspended the earnings element of the triple lock that year, but it caused huge political controversy. So now we come to the meat of the matter, the actual changes that are being proposed for implementation in 2026. I'm going to break these down into distinct categories so you can understand each element clearly, and then we'll look at what the combined impact of all these changes means for your actual pension income. The first major change, and probably the most significant one, relates to the earnings component of the triple lock formula. This is the part that looks at how much average wages have increased across the economy. Under the current system, if average earnings grow by 8%, your pension increases by 8%. Simple as that. But the new proposals introduce something called an earnings cap. The government is considering implementing a maximum limit on how much the earnings element can contribute to your pension increase. The figures being discussed suggest a cap of somewhere between 4 and 5%, meaning that even if wages across the economy grow by 7, 8, or even 10% in a given year, your pension would only increase by this capped amount from the earnings measure. Let me paint you a picture of what this means in real money terms. Imagine you're receiving the full new state pension of approximately £11,500 per year. Now, suppose we have a year where average earnings grow by 8%, but the cap limits your increase to just 5%. That's a difference of 3%, which translates to £345 less in that year alone. Now you might think, well, that's not the end of the world. But here's the crucial point. Pension increases compound over time. That £345 you missed out on in year 1 means your baseline for year 2 is lower, which means every subsequent increase is calculated on a smaller amount. Over a 20-year retirement, this compounding effect could cost you tens of thousands of pounds in total pension income. This isn't theoretical. This is real money that won't be in your bank account. The second major change involves rethinking how inflation is measured within the triple lock formula. Currently, the government uses the Consumer Prices Index, which we all know as CPI, as the measure of inflation. However, there's now serious discussion about either switching to a different measure or creating an entirely new inflation index specifically designed for pensioners. Now you might wonder why this matters. Different inflation measures produce different numbers, sometimes significantly different numbers. For example, there's another measure called the Retail Prices Index, or RPI, which historically tends to run about 0.5 to 1 percentage point higher than CPI. If the government switched to RPI, that would generally be good news for pensioners because it would mean higher increases. However, and this is important, the government has been systematically moving away from RPI in other areas precisely because it produces higher figures. So there's very little chance they'll switch to RPI for pensions. What's more likely is that they'll create what they're calling a pensioner cost of living index. Now, on the surface, this sounds reasonable, even good. After all, pensioners spend their money differently than the general population. You spend more on heating, on healthcare, on certain food items, and less on things like childcare, commuting, and professional clothing. So a pensioner-specific index should, in theory, better reflect the actual cost pressures you face. But here's where we need to be cautious. The devil is absolutely in the detail of how such an index would be constructed, which items would be included, how would they be weighted. Who decides what's representative of pensioner spending? These technical decisions could make an enormous difference to the final inflation figure that's calculated. If the government constructs this index in a way that systematically produces lower figures than CPI, then what looks like a reform designed to help pensioners could actually result in smaller pension increases. We need to watch this space very carefully and scrutinize the methodology when it's published. The third significant change, and one that might seem small but could have major implications, involves the baseline 2.5% guarantee. This is your safety net, the minimum increase you're guaranteed even in years when both inflation and earnings growth are very low or even negative. The proposals suggest reducing this floor from 2.5% down to either 2% or possibly even 1.5%, depending on economic circumstances. Now you might think, well, half a percentage point or 1 percentage point doesn't sound like much. But remember, we're talking about every single year of your retirement, and these amounts compound over time. Let's do some quick math to illustrate this. Suppose you retire at 66 and live until 86. That's 20 years of retirement. If your pension increases by an average of 2.5% per year over those 2 decades, your pension will have grown by approximately 64% in total. But if it only increases by 2% per year over the same period, your pension will have grown by only 49%. That's a difference of 15 percentage points in your total pension growth over your retirement. On a starting pension of £11,500, that difference amounts to over £1,700 per year by the time you reach 86. And remember, that's every year for the rest of your life. Now let's talk about who exactly will be affected by these changes, because this is where things get a bit complicated and potentially divisive. The government has indicated that they're considering different approaches for different groups of pensioners. The current thinking suggests that the most significant changes, particularly the earnings cap, would primarily apply to new retirees, meaning people who reach state pension age from April 2026 onwards. This makes political sense because it's always easier to change the rules for people who haven't started receiving benefits yet, rather than taking money away from existing recipients. However, and this is crucial, there's also discussion about applying some elements of the reforms to existing pensioners as well. The earnings cap in particular might be implemented across the board, affecting everyone regardless of when they retired. This creates the potential for what policy experts call a two-tier system, where different groups of pensioners see their incomes growing at different rates depending on when they retired. You can imagine the political sensitivity of this. Pensioners who retired in 2025 could be protected by the full triple lock for their entire retirement, while someone who retires just 12 months later in 2026 could face the new, less generous system for the next 20 or 30 years. If you're already retired and receiving your state pension, you're probably wondering exactly how these changes will impact you personally. The honest answer is that we don't yet have complete clarity on this, but the indications suggest you'll see some impact even if you're partially protected from the most dramatic reforms. The earnings cap looks increasingly likely to apply to all pensioners, regardless of when you retired. The changes to inflation measures and the baseline guarantee might be phased in gradually, affecting everyone, but perhaps with some transitional protections for older pensioners. If you're approaching retirement within the next few years, these changes should be at the forefront of your retirement planning right now. If you're planning to retire in 2025, you might just squeak in under the old rules. But if retirement is planned for 2026 or later, you need to factor these changes into your calculations. This might mean working a bit longer to build up more private pension savings. It might mean reassessing your expected retirement income and adjusting your lifestyle plans accordingly. Or it might mean exploring other income sources to supplement your state pension. For younger workers who still have decades until retirement, the compounding effect of these changes is even more dramatic. If you're currently in your 40s or 50s, the difference between retiring under the old triple lock system and retiring under the new reform system could amount to tens of thousands of pounds over your lifetime. This makes it more important than ever to maximize your contributions to workplace pensions, to consider additional private pension savings, and to not rely solely on the state pension as your foundation for retirement income. The broader implications of these changes extend beyond just individual pensioners. Financial advisors across the country are already revising their retirement planning models and recommendations. The standard advice about how much you need to save for retirement is being recalculated. The assumptions about state pension income that underpin millions of retirement plans are being questioned. This represents a fundamental shift in how we think about retirement security in the UK, and it's happening right now. There's also the political dimension that we simply cannot ignore. The triple lock has been a political football for years, with all major parties historically committed to maintaining it because pensioners are such a significant voting bloc. These proposed reforms represent a major shift in political consensus, and they've already sparked intense debate across the political spectrum. Some commentators argue that the original triple lock was always a political gimmick that promised more than could be sustainably delivered, and that reform is necessary to ensure fairness between generations. Others contend that any weakening of the triple lock represents a betrayal of older people who paid into the system their whole working lives with certain expectations about what they'd receive in return. What happens from here is still somewhat fluid. The government has published consultation papers outlining these proposals, and there's currently a period of public consultation where individuals, organizations, and advocacy groups can submit their responses and concerns. Based on this feedback, the government will finalize the legislation that will actually implement these changes. This means the details could still shift, possibly significantly, depending on the public response and the amount of political pressure that's brought to bear. However, the overall direction of travel seems firmly established. Some form of triple lock reform is coming, that much is virtually certain, and pensioners need to start preparing for this new reality right now. So there we have it, folks, a comprehensive deep dive into the triple lock changes coming in 2026 and what they mean for your pension and your retirement security. I know this has been a lot of information to take in, and some of it is frankly quite concerning if you're relying on your state pension as a significant part of your retirement income. but knowledge is power, and understanding what's coming gives you the opportunity to plan, to adapt, and to take action now to protect your financial future. Let me summarize the key points one more time. The triple lock is being reformed with three major changes: an earnings cap that limits how much your pension can increase based on wage growth, potential changes to how inflation is measured that could affect your annual increases, and a reduction in the baseline guarantee from 2.5% to possibly as low as 1.5%. These changes will primarily affect people who retire from 2026 onwards, but existing pensioners won't be completely insulated from the impact. The combined effect of these reforms could mean thousands, possibly tens of thousands of pounds less in total pension income over the course of your retirement compared to what you might have expected under the old system. If you found this video valuable, and I really hope you did, please hit that like button right now because it helps more people find this crucial information. Subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you never miss an update on this developing story or any other important financial news affecting pensioners. I'll be following every twist and turn of the triple lock reforms and bringing you updates as soon as new information becomes available. Drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. How do you think these changes will affect you personally? Do you think the reforms are fair, or do you think they represent a broken promise to pensioners? I genuinely read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this issue. Thank you so much for watching today and for trusting me to bring you this important information. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll be discussing more crucial topics for pensioners and retirees. Until then, take care of yourselves, stay informed, and remember that knowledge and planning are your best tools for securing a comfortable retirement. See you next time.